Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramakrishna. Dear devotees and friends, once again, I have got the opportunity, by the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, to meet many of you. And also I am finding some faces whom I am seeing after a very long time. So happy to see every one of you. Today, you have been asking me to speak on Shankara, that is the great Adi Shankara, in one of his aspects. You want to see him as a devotee Shankara. You know, whenever we pronounce the term Adi Shankara, immediately our mind goes to certain associated thoughts with Adi Shankara. Adi Shankara is very well known now all over the world, wherever Vedanta is being discussed. And he is extremely associated with a particular type of Vedanta called Advaita Vedanta. So you cannot speak on Advaita Vedanta or any aspect of Advaita Vedanta without touching the great Adi Shankara. So he has become like a iti word in Advaita Vedanta. And so far, nobody has overtaken him. And you see that did he have other aspects in his life also? It's a very great question that comes to our mind whenever we think about or reflect upon Adi Shankara. It's strange somehow in our mindset, it has been established that Adi Shankara was a pure and pure Advaita Vedantin. Even if you take it for granted, yes, that is true. Though there are people who will contest that, there are people who say Sri Adi Shankara was a Vaishnava devotee. Even to that extent, there are people to say that. But even if you take it that in whole Adi Shankara stood for Advaita Vedanta, still the question crops up, what about his life? Should we divest Adi Shankara, the entire philosophy that he has propounded, from the life that he led? His life has been written by many great people, the Lord who later came upon, even by his disciples. And Madhviya Shankara Vijayam is one of the book which is considered as the authoritative book on the life of Adi Shankara. But when you go through that book, what do you find? His life story. From his birth to his Mahasamadhi, the life delineates one by one incident after another. So, should you completely forget all the life incidents and take only what he wrote as a philosophy, as a commentary for the Prasthanatrayas? As a Hindu, everyone is supposed to know that our entire belief system is based on a philosophy, which is again based on 3 books. What are the 3 books? Upanishads. Second is Brahma Sutras. And in between, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. These 3 books are called Prasthanatrayas. 3 books. So Trayas they are called. This Prasthanatrayas is very important for our life. You will find you can trace any of the belief system as a Hindu has from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Kutch to Kolkata. You go there and see any belief system of any Hindu you take it, this must have somewhere is caught in these 3 books. You will find these 3 books contains ideas so vast. So if a person is Advaita tendency is there, he can interpret these Prasthanatrayas according to his mind. Likewise, if anybody has got a Vishishtadvaita tendency, he can also quote from these three books. And if you are a Dvaitin, very well, you can also quote from these three. So these three has become a source books for any system of faith in Hinduism. So now, this Swamiji, when he came back from America, he was given a rousing reception all over India. You know that. At that time, it was one India. So he went to Lahore. In Lahore, he gave a talk on Vedanta to the Arya Samaj people. And also, the Sanatana Dharma Sabha people also were there in the audience. To both of them, he addressed a very beautiful talk called The Vedanta. That is the title. Now, in that, Swamiji explains, somehow, in the modern mind, Vedanta means Advaita Vedanta. This correlation has somehow it has happened. Swamiji also uses the word somehow, which I thought I am using it, but no, Swamiji also uses that word very clearly. Yes. So now you find how, just a minute, I'm trying to take the portion. Swamiji says here, unfortunately, there is a mistaken notion in modern India that the word Vedanta has reference only to the Advaita system, not to the other two systems or to any other system. So this is the point Swamiji raises in that lecture, in the public lecture, and he brings out a holistic approach to Vedanta by telling the Vedanta includes and does not exclude any such system of faith in Hinduism. From worship of the stone or the leaf to the highest acceptance of God within myself, the realization of the self, to that every system of belief is included in Vedanta. This is a very holistic approach which Swamiji got from Sri Ramakrishna. It is a great contribution of Sri Ramakrishna to Swamiji and teach him that this is how Vedanta should be interpreted in the modern days. So Swamiji says, what is the glorious motto of the Ramakrishna order? He says, to preach Vedanta as propounded and practiced by Sri Ramakrishna. These are the words Swamiji uses in his rules. As propounded and practiced by Sri Ramakrishna. So you find that Sri Ramakrishna's faith system includes everything. Nothing is excluded. Now, if you take this holistic attitude of the Vedanta, can you divest Adi Shankara from his life of all the writings that he did? What are the writings he did? He wrote a lot. Only 32 years he lived. Like Swamiji was less than 40, 39 years. Likewise, just 7 years less than Swamiji's. And 32 years, he did remarkable jobs. What are the jobs he did, The activities that Shankara did during his time where there was no conveyance. There is no easy conveyance, mind you, like as on today. And he was like a cyclonic monk of India. That was the title given to Swamiji in America. And within India, this Bharat Khandam, where Adi Shankara was a cyclonic monk. And he used to go everywhere. And in the 4 places of India, he established branches. Can you imagine in those days, in 6th century or 7th century, he established 4 branches and in the 4 corners of India. And such person, how can you divest his life? So what is the opinion or what is the thinking of Shankaracharya? You will find it from his writings. His writings are also classified into 3 types. One is called Bhashya Granthas. Bhashya Grantha means commentary written on the Prasthanatraya, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma Sutra. Shankara wrote commentary. Those commentary was voluminous. Even today, the Shankara devotees study these commentaries to understand what Shankara gives arguments to establish the Advaita Vedanta as the supreme philosophy. So if you want to understand that, his bhashyas have to be read. So the first classification is Bhashya Granthas. Then Shankara came up. He saw that Bhashya Grantha cannot be read unless a person is initiated into the study of Sanskrit in its entirety. So you must know the Sanskrit logic, you must know the Sanskrit grammar, you must know the Sanskrit vrittam. All those things you must know. Then only you'll be able to appreciate the Bhashya. Many of our devotees I see, and they take pride in telling me that Swamiji, I have read Shankara's Gita Bhashya. I have read Shankara's Sutras Bhashya, Brahma Sutra Bhashya. I said, is it? How did you read? I read in English translation. I had to smile only. Because English translation, translated by anybody, any biggest, any best person in the world, cannot be equal to the original Sanskrit in which he wrote. See, why people ask me, Swamiji, how did you pick up Bangla? What made you take interest in understanding or reading and writing Bangla language? I said, well, that is our master's language. My Ishta Sri Ramakrishna used to speak in that language. People say Sanskrit is Deva Bhasha. I used to make fun, For me, Bangla is Deva Bhasha. How? Because Ramakrishna Dev spoke. So it is called Deva Bhasha. For me, it is Deva Bhasha. So I must learn. So if you are interested in understanding Shankara, you must go to the original and read. The nuances of Sanskrit language, you can explain, you can see. I'm telling you one small example of Bhavani Tvam. In Bhavani Ashtam, he says, Bhavani Tvam so and so, etc. He praises Bhavani. And then he says, Bhavani Tvam. Bhavani Tvam, that is thou Bhavani, you Bhavani. And the third line he says, Bhavani Tvam. That means I must get Bhavani Tvam. I must be one with you. Bhavani Tva. You see, these type of wonderful explanations are there. So the second category I said is, he thought, people who cannot rise up to the level of understanding Bhashyas, they must be given something. The same Upanishadic ideas, same Gita ideas, same Brahma Sutra ideas to be put into ordinary language of Sanskrit so that the normal people can study it. So he wrote Prakarana Granthas. So first I said Bhashya Granthas. The second classification comes as a Prakarana Granthas. These Prakarana Granthas, plenty of Granthas are there. Viveka Chudamani, very famous. Most of our devotees are fond of this book. And I find that many who are interested in Advaita Vedanta, they go through the Viveka Chudamani. This is one of the Prakarana Granthas. Likewise, Atma Bodha. Likewise, many are there. Total, he wrote about 300 works. The complete works of Acharya Shankara has come up from a publisher in Madras a few years back. I have seen that. The entire thing, whatever he wrote, has been put into print. So many people keep it in their library, several volumes it runs. Now, the second is Prakarana Granthas are very useful to understand the concepts that are in Upanishads. The Bhashya itself he explains, but then still, if you cannot understand that, you can go to Prakarana Granthas and read what is what. You can understand that. Now, there are people who even cannot reach up to the level of Prakarana Granthas. For them, much more easier way you have to bring to their idea. How do you classify the people in our normal life? Highly intellectual, normal, highly emotional. Emotion, intellect. This is a gamut of worldly experience that we have. You take emotion and another side you take intellect. So from emotion, we raise to the level of intellectual. From childhood, baby time, you see, as a child, we are all emotional. Not much of intellect worked at that time. Only emotion overtook us at that time. And slowly, slowly, we developed the intellect. And now, at the age of 80, you may be a highly intellectual person. But that doesn't mean all your emotions have been dried out. They are still there. Sometimes elderly people I have seen behaving like a child. Don't you see that? The elderly man will say, I would say that, Maharaj, you cannot eat. When I was in Seva Pratishthan in Sishumangal, I used to tell the senior Swamiji, Maharaj, you are very old. This is not good for you. So you should not eat this. Then he will know, he will take that item, that bati to his heart and close it like this and say, no, 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 I will eat like this, he will say. As an old man, full of emotion, like a baby he behaves. So this emotion we do not lose it. What happens is certain people, whatever be their age, live at different levels of emotion and intellect. So there are people who are tuned to emotion, not to intellect. For them, he brought out another set of literature, and those literature are called Stotra Granthas. Stotram. Each stotram, that is stuti, stotram comes from the word stuti. In each stotram, you will find that he is praising the Lord in different names. He has got stotras on Lord Vishnu, on Mahadeva, on Parvati, on Durga, on Kali, even on Ganga Mother, whom the Nadi also we consider as mother. So on Ganges is written. So likewise is written on many, many deities that we are all following. Why should he write? You must see his life. His life was full of karma kathor, as Swamiji says about Sri Ramakrishna. I also think Adi Shankara's life must be a karma kathor. Not only establishing 4 centers in 4 corners of India, he was constantly moving and bringing people together. What type of people who were divided at this time? Among the society of Sanatana Dharma, the followers of Sanatana Dharma, there were 6 groups. They were all fighting with each other. The groups were Shiva followers as Shaivas, Vishnu followers as Vaishnavas, Devi Upasakas as Shaktas, Ganesha Upasakas, Ganesha followers as Ganapatyas, and Murugan followers as Kaumaras. And then last, those who worship neither of these devotees, they say our devotee is seen by our eyes. These deities are not seen by Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesha and Murugan and Devi. They are all not seen by your eyes. But one deity is there which is seen by your eyes every day, and that is Lord Surya. So they are called Sauras. So these 6 varieties of faiths were there, and it was to the great credit of Shankara that he brought them together. So Swamiji says he wonders at Shankara's accomplishment. Swamiji says, today as we find Hinduism, what Hinduism you find is because of Adi Shankara. Without him, the present day Hinduism would not be there. We all would be still fighting with each other, mind you. Even in Sri Ramakrishna's time, Sri Ramakrishna jokingly makes fun about this, the Kali Bhaktas and Krishna Bhaktas. In his time also there was a group which was fighting between Kali and Krishna, not knowing Kali and Krishna are one and the same. So these type of ideas were there in our society, and it was Adi Shankara, given to him. He united them and brought the Sanatana Dharma to the present state of affairs. Today, none of the Hindu will say, I don't like. You may have Ishta Devata. Okay. You may consider Krishna as your Ishta Devata, doesn't matter. But you won't say that Vishnu is bad or Shiva should not be worshipped or I won't go to Kali temple. You won't say that. How this magnanimity has come in your mind? It is because of Adi Shankara, mind you. So this Prakarana, the Bhashya Granthas, Prakarana Granthas, and Stotra Granthas. We are now interested to see his life, how the Stotra Granthas made him a devotee. So I would consider, say, even if you see in Viveka Chudamani itself, let us take one of the Prakarana Granthas, he defines what is bhakti. Shankara has got his own way of defining bhakti. Though Sri Ramakrishna says, Narada's bhakti is the way of bhakti in Kali Yuga. Narada also says, what is bhakti? And after that, Shankara also has got one definition. It's a very famous definition. Moksha Karana Samagryam. In Samagri means tools. For the tools to attain the moksha Karana, that which is possible to attain moksha. So there are many tools are there. Of the tools, Bhakti Reva Gariyasi. Bhakti is the special. He says Bhakti, the devotion is a special tool. Of all the tools that you have, according to Swamiji, you have a jnana as a tool, you have a karma as a tool, you have bhakti as a tool, you have yoga as a tool. Tantra is another tool. Like that, you can go on increasing the tool samagri for attaining moksha. But then Shankara says, Bhakti reva gariyasi, the eva, the word he uses, Bhakti alone is special. That much importance he gives. And then he says, what is bhakti? What is bhakti according to Shankara? Next line he says, Swa Swarupa Anusandhanam. Bhakti iti abhidiyate. He says, Swa Swarupa Anusandhanam. Anusandhan. This word you all must be very easy to understand. Any go to either airport or railway station, you'll find there one counter is there, one lady is sitting there. Anusandhan is written there. Enquiry. Anusandhanam. Swarupa Anusandhanam. Are you inquiring about your own self? Not about others, mind you. Not Paraswarupa. Thinking of God in the idol or in the images or in the photos. These are all Paraswarupa. But Swaswarupa, asking yourself, inquiring within yourself, this Swaswarupa Anusandhanam, this is called Bhakti. Now, a person who's raised Bhakti to the highest level of realization of self, take into account millions of people who worship that same, that is Swaswarupa in different forms and different names. Can he neglect them? No, he cannot neglect them. So you have to take this type of stotra literature where you can find Lord Shankara. How he comes, I will tell you a little later. Let us go back to his life. As a young boy, hardly 7 years old, he went for bhiksha. And mother said, Ma, today I will go and collect bhiksha from outside. Okay, you go. So she went. In some houses, they give some bhiksha, you bring and take that food. But then one house, that lady came and she started crying before this boy. Then Shankara asked her, Mother, why are you crying? Why are you shedding tears? No, boy, I do not have anything to give it to you. In my house, there is nothing. My husband has gone out to earn money. Then if he brings something, then I will be able to cook. Then only I will be able to give you. And you have come as a bhiksha dehi. Like that you are telling, bhiksham dehi. And how can I give bhiksha to you? I do not have anything. Then Shankara smiled. Mother, I see a beautiful tree in your garden. Yes, what is the tree? It's an amlaka tree. Can you not pluck one amlaka and give it to me? She was so happy. This I never thought. I can give these fruits to him. She ran to the tree and plucked one amlaka and brought it and kept it on the small, tiny little palms. And then Shankara folded his palms. And to whom he prayed? He did not pray to Krishna, neither to Shiva, nor to Vishnu. Straight away he went to Mother Lakshmi. And he said, "Oh, Mother Lakshmi, is this the state of affairs in your Rajya? In your state? Is this a place like this? I want this lady to be compensated for the great heart she has. She brought this Amlaki and gave me." And Mother Lakshmi's grace happened at that moment. And it is said, it not rained, it poured. What was poured? The gold coins were poured like Amlaki. That boy, young boy, he extempore sang a sloka, a stotra on Mother Lakshmi. Even now, I tell you, in South India, this shloka has become so popular. Actually, I have not seen in North India the Adi Shankara's slokas as popular as in South India. If you go to any place in South India, you will find people are chanting, the temple people are chanting Adi Shankara stotras, different stotras. But then in North India, you find very little of that effect is there. But then North India, of course, is meant for philosophy, you see. So they discuss, Atman and etc. But here in South India, mostly religious, temple-oriented people, you find this bhakti is there. So what they do, they chant this stotra. This is called Kanakadhara Stotram. We tell, some devotees sometimes go into penury. Sometimes they go into poverty. They do not have job. They don't have a means to meet the two ends. At that time, when they come to us, we advise them. I have advised some devotees to chant 41 days this Kanakadhara Stotram. Some opening will happen to you. And it has happened. Because I have experienced this, I'm telling you. Such a powerful stotram. Kanakadhara, so Lakshmi Stotram. So likewise, you find that bhakti in the small child. Unless he had bhakti, why should Mahalakshmi should listen to him? If he don't have bhakti, she will not listen. So he wrote many stotra granthas. One of the granthas is called Shivananda Lahari. Lahar means, waves. Shivananda Lahari, Ananda Lahari, it is called. Ananda Lahari means the waves of bliss. It is wonderful to study this Ananda Lahari. There, Shankara gives a definition of bhakti. In Viveka Chudamani, he gave the definition of bhakti as Swaswarupa Anusandhanam. Search of one's own self, Atman. That is Atman. So that is the definition he gave. But you'll be surprised, he gives another definition in Shivananda Lahari, where he speaks about Lord Shiva. Hey, Lord Shiva, you are so wonderful. I know what is bhakti. What is bhakti? He says, he divides the bhakti into 3 types. And they are all so meaningful to us. Swaswarupa Anusandhana may not be meaningful to most of us. Yes, there may be. I don't bring down anybody in the level of their understanding. There are devotees, I find some names, who practice Advaita Vedanta. I know that. Yes, for them, Swaswarupa Anusandhanam is bhakti. But then, for the multitudes, like included me, I am also including within that. And for the multitudes like us, we require something solid, something before our eyes we can catch, something we can understand by our intellect. And that's what Shankara defines what is bhakti. I'll tell you that little, how beautifully he says about that. He says, Hey Pashupate. Pashupate is the name of Lord Shiva, because he is the pati of Pashu. What is Pashu? Pashu is our indriyas. Our indriyas go berserk. It go here and there. It cannot be controlled. But if all the cowherds, when a cowherd take a cows for grazing, the cows may go here and there. But it is the cowherd's duty as a Pashupati to bring all the cows together and bring back to home. Somebody to control the Pashus. So our indriyas are moving, 10 indriyas are moving in different directions. They are to be controlled by one. That's why Lord Shiva is called Pashupati. So, hey Pashupate, Padara Vinda Dvayam, in your 2 lotus feet, Padaravinda, Pada Aravinda Dvayam, two lotus feet, Cheto Vritti Rupetya. Please, Etya means you take me, take me to your feet. Excuse me. So take me to your feet. And Tishtati, whose mind goes to the holy feet of Lord Pashupati and stays there. Sa bhaktir uchyate. He says, Sa bhaktir iti uchyate. That is only bhakti, he says. So you see how Shankara has come down here. So you say that Shankara's bhakti is very high. I cannot follow it, Maharaj. Don't worry. You can take this bhakti, Padaravinda Dvayam. Are we not thinking of the Padaravinda Dvayam of Lord Sri Ramakrishna? As his devotees, we think of his feet. There are many houses who have got Holy Mother's feet. Photo they have kept. Only feet. They keep it. Why? Padaravinda Dvayam. In that, my mind, Cheto Vritti, my Chetana Vritti must be Tishtati. It should be established. It should stay there. And that is called bhakti, he says. So if you see that, this type of bhakti was there in Shankara. Everywhere he went there. So in his life, you find how the Kapalika comes there, the Kapalika is coming to argue with Shankara at one place. And then Shankara argues him and Shankara defeats him. Kapalika says, you have defeated me in argument. I have got no counter argument to pose to win over your arguments. Your intellect is terrible. I cannot stand before that. Let me come and meet you tomorrow. He goes back and comes back and tells next day, hey Shankara, I am a worshipper of Mother Kali. I talked to my Mother Kali. She said, get me a Nara, that is a human sacrifice. So bring somebody who has got no defect in his body. Bring him such a person. And I find you are that person. Can you come? I want to give you Bali to Mother Kali so that I can get my best place in Mother Kali's world. It reminds me of Dadichi Muni. Indra goes and tells him, oh Dadichi Muni, I want your backbone by which I will make Vajra. And with that Vajra, I will defeat the Asura so that I can regain my lost kingdom. And Dadichi Muni says, oh Indra, so many years you have been working here as my sevaka. Why you didn't tell the very first day? I would have gladly given my body. Now take it. He goes into Samadhi and he leaves his body, and that body's backbone was taken, and Indra makes the Vajrayuda. Now you see, likewise, Shankara says to Kapalika, don't worry. You want to take me for Bali? Okay, tomorrow I will come to your place. And he goes there, and nice seat has been put for Shankara, because Shankara sits there, and he puts him, he worships Shankara. The Kapalika worships him, gives him nice garlands, and puts him chandan on his head. And then he's going to take that khadga. And severe, he said, at that moment, something happens. His disciple, one of the disciples, he had 4 main disciples. So one of the disciples was sitting and doing tapasya, only very nearby only, in the jungle. Suddenly he found that his guru is in danger. His guru is going to be killed. Immediately, this boy flew by sky and reached this cave, and then he stopped the Kapalika. And the Kapalika was finally killed by the nails of this disciple. This fighting is going on. And Shankara thinking, why the khadga has not fallen on my neck? So he opened his eyes and he sees his disciple is fighting with this Kapalika. And what did he see? He did not see his disciple as disciple. He saw Lakshmi Narasimha. Narasimha has come. And Narasimha is fighting with that man. And he killed him. and he took his nails as he did for Hiranyakashipu. He did this for Kapalika and killed. And then the disciple is not getting peace of mind. He's still disturbed. Lakshmi Narasimha Karavalamba. It's very famous. In South India, of course, it is very famous. And people sing. There are millions of people who are Narasimha devotees, do you know? If you go to Andhra Pradesh, there are temples dedicated to Narasimha alone. Simhachalam, you must have heard this name. Simhachalam is a place where it's the only Narasimha deity. So likewise, he sang on Narasimha. In another place, he was going in Kashi. While walking, he saw a boy studying Sanskrit. Sanskrit, there are sutras. If you have read Sanskrit, even Kaumudi, this Vyakaran Kaumudi of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, if you have learnt that in your younger days in school, up to 8th class, I heard that in Bengal school, they teach this book. So there also, he has given some sutras. So these sutras, one of the sutras is Dukring Karane. So this boy is trying to by heart is Dukring Karane, Dukring Karane, Dukring Karane. He's repeating it. There Shankara goes there and says, my dear son, this Dukring Karane will not help you. When this Antakala comes, when the last moment comes, when you say Dukring Karane, this is not going to help. Then what I should do? The boy asked, said, Bhaja Govindam. He said, take the name of Lord Govinda. Govindam Bhaja. And he says, Mudamate, you are Buddha. You are actually misguided person. You are not a wise man. A wise man should take the name of Lord so that at the last moment you remember the Lord's name. Can you remember the Lord's name at the last moment if you have not taken the name at all? You can't remember. Whatever you have been taken, that only will come. As Sri Ramakrishna's words, that whatever you have eaten, if you have eaten piyaj, the piyaj burp will come. If you have taken lasun, then that lasun burp will come. So the burp gives the smell of what you have eaten. So what you have done in your life. So Bhajagovindam, Bhajagovindam, Bhajagovindam Mudamate. Samprapte sannihite kale. When you get samprapte, when it comes near you, what comes? Nihite kale. When near it comes, that kala. Nahi nahi rakshati. These things will not help you. They are not going to protect you. What should protect? Bhajagovindam, he says. So it's a beautiful verse. Bhajagovindam, we see. If you are not a devotee, can you write such wonderful, emotional poems? This is the question. I leave it to all of you to understand. So a bhakti, only thinking bhakti in this fashion, that the Saguna Brahman, in Swamiji's Vedanta, you get a clear understanding. The Nirakar, Nirguna Brahman is alone truth. There is nothing else is there. In this world, that only exists. Sat Chit Anandam means that alone, the Nirakara Nirguna Brahman. But it can take the form of it can come down to the level of Saguna Brahman with its power. That power is what creates this universe. And we are all part of that universe. So we are within that universe, where the Saguna Brahman, by his Shakti, this Saguna Brahman only takes the names of the Ishvara, it is called Ishvara, and that Ishvara takes different forms, different deities. So in the Ram Nama, we read that the very first line says, Shuddha Brahma Paratpara Ram. Don't think Ram as a Dasharatha's son. That comes only in the 6th line. First line says, Shuddha Brahma Paratpara. Then by association of time, capital T, Kalatmaka, he becomes Parameshwara. Then slowly it comes. In the 6th line only, that Kausalya Sukha Vardhanara. So the Saguna Brahman takes the forms, different names, and those are all real. Swamiji is telling to, Sri Ramakrishna is telling to Rakhal, tumi Jagadhatri সম্বন্ধে বলছেন, ঠাকুর তাকে বলছেন যেন Jagadhatri is something, is these type of forms should be believed. Rakhal is looking at him. Oh yes, master, yes. And Sri Ramakrishna clearly, these type of forms of gods and goddesses are to be believed because you are within the Kala, within the Desha, within the Nimitta. Desha, Kala, Nimitta. Time, space, and causation. Within these three, you are there. How can you think that you are the self? You are the Brahman. Though Shankara's teaching is very clear that Jiva and Brahma are one and the same. So Jiva Brahmaiva Naparaha. So na aparaha, he says. Clearly he says. So they are one. So Jagan Mithya. Jagat is Mithya. But Brahman is Satya. Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya. Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. That is his teaching. But then to reach to that teaching level of Advaita, we must go step by step. Wherever you are, you grow from that stage. And that is what Sri Ramakrishna in the modern days showed us. How he made easy religion, the entire religion to us is, he is not telling you, you come. Not like Buddha, telling everyone should become a monk. No, that is also not. Sri Ramakrishna says, wherever you are, proceed from that place, step by step. And let us proceed that way and try to understand that Adi Shankara, the great personage of our literature, of our lineage, has also the heart of a devotee. Well, I would not completely call him a complete devotee or a complete jnani. He had all this. He had karma also, karma kator, as I said. He did lot of jobs, 300 literature, one book, to write one book, people take years. 300 books he wrote. It is not a small thing. So he was karma also, he was good. And if you see Saundarya Lahari explanations, Saundarya Lahari also written by him, that each sloka contains the gist of the yoga and tantra. So all these fields, any field you take, Adi Shankara shines. So I would say, yes, he is a devotee. You cannot consider him just because he wrote on Advaita, he is not a devotee. That is what I am saying, that yes, he is a devotee. So with this, I conclude. Now I open to every one of you. You can tell your either comments or remarks or any questions.
I offer to be the coordinator, but I don't have any question, Maharaj. Please, anybody questions, please.
Maharaj, from our practical perspective, from where we are, Kali Yuge Bhakti is the method. And how much of Gyan and how much of Bhakti? So where is it, if it is a parallel stream, how much to pursue on the Gyan Marga? Where do we draw a line between Gyan and Bhakti?
Very good.
Can you,
Thank you
help?
Yes. You see, according to Swami Vivekananda, whom we accept as our guide, he says, each person is endowed with 4 types of faculties: intellect, emotion, working capability, and solitude, that is meditative aspect. These 4 types are there in each individual. In somebody, there's a mixture of all these 4 also is there. In different combination, they are there. In some, a particular faculty may be predominant. So we are given to us, when we meet our Gurudevs, we sit with him and talk to him and find out. If you don't have your Gurudev immediately now, you can go to a very senior Swami of the order, sit with him and talk to him and find out which one is predominant in you. If you cannot yourself detect that. If I know that emotion is predominant in me, I would naturally keep bhakti as my predominant value to pursue. The other things I will definitely learn. I will definitely learn what is jnana, what is yoga, and what is karma. Everything I will do. But then bhakti will be my main source. You can clearly see in many of the ashrams, in Singapore ashram I have seen, there are all our public functions are divided into segments. So bhajan singing is one segment. Lecture and reading is one segment. And meditation is one segment. And then karma, that is arrangement of the food, etc., that is one segment. So all these 4 segments are there when you come. So as a devotee, you must select which one you are. I'm seeing Shashank here. Shashank used to come to our Singapore center and he used to be a karma yogi. Tell him any job and he will do it. He's ready to do it. A karma yogi. So for him, that is, if you ask him to sit for 1.5 hour meditation, perhaps he may not like it. If you ask him to do bhajans for 1.5 hours, he may not like it. So in Singapore ashram, I have seen some people come for the bhajan segment, some people come for the dhyana segment, some people come for the speech and intellectual there. So they come for that segment. And some people don't enter at all the shrine. They come and make pranam and then go away. Where do they go? They are in the kitchen, cutting vegetables, cooking, arranging in plates. They are karma yogis. You see, this temperament, according to the temperament, which is predominant in you, you have to select. If you yourself cannot understand which is predominant in you, you must consult a divine person who can guide you, definitely.
Maharaj, a corollary to that question, are there phases in our sadhana that we actually become pradhan of one of these? So, I mean, is it that you suddenly, there is a phase in your sadhana that we are becoming more jnana pradhan or more karma pradhan or more bhakti pradhan? I mean, I personally see this happen wherein there are phases where bhakti doesn't possibly come very easily, but I'm want to get very intense with trying to know and trying to analyze. And unlike, there'll be phases where I'm more on the side of, singing and singing bhajans and things like that. So, I mean, are there phases where we become more predominantly one kind?
Yes, it is true, Vidyadhar, because in one's own life, you can see that at some time or some phase of your life, you find bhakti is higher. And some phase of time, you only want to sit and read, that's all. You want to know more and more. And some phase of time, you would like to go and sit and meditate more. Yes, that happens. That can also happen. In spite of any one faculty being predominant, the others also can come up at some time in your life and become predominant naturally. That's why I'm telling you, we are all having these 4 faculties. It is only mixture in different combinations. There is nothing wrong in that. I have seen some Swamis, say for Gambhirananji Maharaj. You all must have heard his name. Gambhirananji went to Mayavati and wanted to completely put himself in writing books. He wrote Mother's Life, the wonderful life that we are all reading on every Saturday. We are reading Mother's Life. That he wrote there. He wrote in Bangla and he himself wrote it in English. So you find, see, that type of completely secluded himself and sitting there. I have seen some sadhus taking leave, 1 year, 2 year leave they take. And the headquarters ask them, what is the purpose? Where are you going? No, Swamiji, I am going to Uttarkashi. I am going to lead a begging life. I will not cook in my ashram. I will go and beg and eat 1 time a day and do some tapasya. See, that tapasya pravanata has come in him. So he wants to spend. And our Belur Math allows them. Yes, if you want to do tapasya, go. As on today, 6 Swamis of our order are on tapasya mode. Is somebody in Uttarkashi, somebody is in Narmada Parikrama, somebody is moving around like that without a single pie. So that is called, so that is now important to them. So likewise, you can practice whatever raises as predominance in you at that time. Anyway, whatever you do, our final goal is to be with the Lord whom I love, and that is bhakti.
Swamiji, Anant here.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question that Shankara, even though he was a sadhu, he cremated his mother. So, what was the drishtanta? What was the illustration for the for normal human beings like us in doing that act?
See, the traditional view of a sadhu is he has cut off the bondage with his family people. So he goes away from his house. He doesn't stay in his house. Even in mission also, suppose I come from Chennai, I won't like to be posted in Chennai ashram, because our own people are there. So we are cut off. So why should we go and stay there? Like that the people think. So the sadhu's tradition is that you go to a faraway place and you spend your time. So your mother, in Shankara's life, that is an exception, I should say, because he promised his mother. His mother said at the age of 8, he assumed sannyasa. Shankara's mother was stunned because that crocodile came and caught the feet of Shankara and he was dragging into the pond and it is going to kill him. So Shankara pleads with his mother, "Oh mother, please allow me to take sannyas." Without mother's permission, no one should take sannyas. That is also rule is there. If you go against the wishes of your mother and take sannyas, that sannyas life will not be permanent with you. You will be out of that. So mother's blessings are required. So he is telling his mother, he says, "Mom, please give me permission." She says, "How can I give permission to go leave me and become sannyasi?" He says, "This crocodile is catching my foot and it is going to anyway eat. Whether you give or not permission, it is going to eat. But before dying, why not me have the sannyas? Let me assume the sannyas ashram mentally. Anyway, I'm going to die. Please give me." And she gave the permission. The moment permission was given, the crocodile left him and went away. You see. So Shankara came out and said, "Now I am a sannyasi, mother. Now I am going." And he left his home. But before he left, mother said, "My child, I want to see you." Because her husband has passed away, there was no other child. She was all alone staying in Kaladi, in the small village. And she's telling, "I want to see you at my last moment." So Shankara promises her, "Wherever I may be, I shall come and meet you at your last moment," he says. And it that so happened when she was going to pass away, Shankara comes and then he meets his mother and mother died on his lap. She left his last breath. And then now she has to be, the final rites have to be done. And all the Brahmins, the Pujari class, priest class of that place, they all went against Shankara. He said, "You are a sannyasi, you cannot do the last rites of mother." Then Shankara asked, "Who is going to do?" "Well, none of you is ready to do. So I have to do mine." So he did that. And for that, he asked the river, which is far away, "Come here to my mother's place so that I can give a nice bath to her," to that body, dead body. And the river turned its movement and it came to his house. And that is the house you find. If you go to Kaladi today, you will find Shankara's birthplace where the river goes very near to his house. You can see that. Still the river is there. So it was an exception. But in Swamiji's life also we see, Swamiji also in his life you find, he had great devotion to his mother. And how his mother was sent out by her own relatives. So he has to take care of. In Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa's life, he never told his mother that he has taken sannyas from Totapuri, lest she will weep and wail and cry and, and make a scene there. So he never told her. And in Chaitanya's, there was, in Chaitanya's going to take sannyas. The drama itself is, will bring tears and tears among the public. If you have seen that drama, Chaitanya's drama. So likewise, there are exceptions among the great men. But then normal rule is you are not supposed to do any of the rites. That is the karmakanda rites, a sannyasi is not supposed to do. Yes.
Thanks, Maharaj.
Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Om